And so then Trivikram and I were kind of like, hey, maybe we should take Prabhupada to Antarctica. It was like a joke. Did any devotees ever go to Antarctica? I said, well, I've never heard of that before. So I thought, oh, I wonder if you can get to Antarctica. The bipolar joke is, okay, so you went to the South Pole, now you have to go to the North Pole. But there's nothing up there. There's no land up there. The North Pole is just ice, so there's really nothing there.
From Alachua, Florida, this is Nectar Talks.
In collaboration with Krishna.com.
And in service to our Bhakti community. Hare Krishna Prabhu. It's so wonderful to be here with you today, truly. My name is Amrita Kali, and today I have the great pleasure of having Kesihanta Prabhu with us. He has been a dedicated Srila Prabhupada disciple and a devotee in Alachua for many decades, and is known for quite a few things, which I can't wait to get into with you today. And I know you as you're a spiritual uncle to me. I feel like I got to know you quite early on in my Krishna consciousness through service at the Krishna House. Right. And I've been told that the way we build strong, meaningful relationships in Krishna consciousness is through service, and it's an honor that that's how I was introduced to you. Mm-hmm. And so I felt very grateful to know you, and yet here we are having an interview where I'm going to be learning so much more about you that I don't know yet. And so I'm really grateful. It's an honor. So thank you so much. And yeah, we've been trying to do this for a long time. Yes. There's some build up to that. And also there's a particular aspect, just one small aspect of your life that we've been wanting to get into for some time now.
Yes.
Particularly. We will do that, actually, we're hoping, in a subsequent interview. But for today, I would like to introduce that chapter of your life and talk a little bit about it.
Okay.
So you know what I'm alluding to.
I do believe.
Maybe some of our viewers do too, but this is a remarkable year. It's the 60th anniversary of Srila Prabhupada's arrival on board the Jaladuta, yes, right, to Boston Harbor. So you went to that festival recently, yes, in Boston, and I heard it was wonderful. Maybe you can share with us a little bit more about that. But somehow, I think, perhaps, inspired by Srila Prabhupada's traveling here by boat, and then his subsequent travels preaching in every continent in the world, with one exception.
Yes.
You became inspired to go to Antarctica.
Yes. So it was actually 10 years ago when they did a similar festival in Boston, which was the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada's arrival. So okay, I was invited to go by P.R. Mohan Prabhu, who was at that time president and the regional secretary for Boston. He was also the president of Hartford, and he still is the president of Hartford, but now they have some other leadership in Boston. So he convinced me to go, and I wasn't planning on it because I wasn't sure if Devaki, my wife, couldn't get off from work. So anyway, he convinced me to go, and I went. And I ended up staying with a friend of mine named Trivikram, who is the mystery man that we're trying to get sitting here someday, who I'd known from when I lived in Boston.
Okay.
I left in 93, but I kept in touch with Trivikram. So this was in 2015. So I called him up, and I thought, well, it's so late in the game that I'm not going to be able to find a place to stay with anybody I know. I called Trivikram, who was single at the time, and lo and behold, he had a place for me to stay with him. So I stayed with him, and so I was hanging out with him. He's great fun, and we went to the festival together. And part of the festival was, besides going out on a little boat into the harbor and going to the Commonwealth Pier, they also have a program, like a public program, and that year they had it in Faneuil Hall, which is a famous historic building in Boston. So they had speakers, devotee speakers, and some, local dignitaries and so on and so forth. So a lot of devotees that were giving talks were talking about Prabhupada's journey and how after coming to Boston, and then he went to New York, and then, of course, the rest is history, and he traveled around 14 times or 12 times around the world, whatever the actual number is, over the next 12 years. And he went to every continent and established Krishna consciousness all over the world. And someone else gave a similar talk about Prabhupada's accomplishments and how he went to 6 continents and all that. And so that kind of planted something like, okay, interesting. Prabhupada went to 6 continents. That's wonderful. Then Anutama Prabhu, the Minister of Public Relations or Communications, he gave like one of the last talks. He said, okay, Prabhus, this is the 50th anniversary of Prabhupada leaving Calcutta to come to America, and there was a huge festival in Calcutta that they had done, a couple months before, and now we're doing this one here, and so that's very wonderful. Devotees came from all over in India to Calcutta and all over to here for Boston. But next year is the 50th anniversary of ISKCON, and that should be celebrated at every temple and every devotee. So what are you going to do for Prabhupada's, to glorify Prabhupada next year, the 50th anniversary of ISKCON? And so then Trivikram and I were kind of like, hey, maybe we should take Prabhupada to Antarctica. It was like a joke.
Both of you? Like at the same time?
Well, I don't know whether it was I'm not going to take credit for it, but it was probably me.
Okay. Because that would have been really wild.
So Trivikram said, yeah, maybe we should.
Wow.
So then at the festival, I think they also had a Rath Yatra the next day. So I asked Anutama, and I was asking different devotees, like, do you know, did any devotees ever go to Antarctica? I said, well, I've never heard of that before. So I thought, I wonder if you can get to Antarctica. So I thought, I'm going to look into that. So, I went home, and on the flight home, they were offering some credit card, like you can get so many thousands of miles if you get this credit card. I said, well, maybe if I'm going to go to Antarctica, I might need those miles. So I signed up for the credit card. I got home, I started researching that you can actually go there as like a tourist on a little mini expedition. So, but then somebody said, well, in Calcutta, they said they were going to try to, for their festival, they were going to try to get devotees from all the continents to chant together to show how Prabhupada's reach went all over the world.
Wow.
And I wrote to the devotee in Calcutta who was in charge of the festival, which had already happened, and I said, I saw your advertisement before the festival that you wanted devotees from all the continents. Did you get anyone from Antarctica? He never wrote me back. So I thought, okay. Then
I wonder if he thought it was a prank.
I don't know. Then they put out this video.
Wow.
They had videotaped it, of course. This is only 10 years ago. These things were going on. And they put it up on YouTube. It was 7 hours long, the whole festival. I said, okay, I guess I got to go through the festival and see what happened. So I was doing other things, but I was playing it in the background. And then they had the thing, and now we're going to have people, and here's someone from Africa, and here's someone from South America, and here's some. So there was no one from Antarctica. So then I did some Google searching, didn't find anything. So I thought, okay, this is something. So I got back to Trivikram. I said, okay, Trivikram, here's our chance. And he said, okay, I'm in. I said, well, you better start saving some money. Okay, I'll start saving some money. So that was September of 2015. And so for the next, basically 15 months, I was obsessed with this idea. I do have a website, krishnasouth.com, and there's a whole blog, different chapters that get into all the nitty-gritty details. And we also want to save some more for when we finally get Trivikram. But anyway, the point is that it was 15 months of preparation, and it was a 15-day trip, and I got my 15 minutes of fame more than once, so it was a good
well, you
investment.
Can't leave it all. Okay, Trivikram Prabhu, we're coming for you.
Yeah, but I will just.
But you can't leave us at that. You have to tell us something about what was it like going on this ship? I mean, did you take a sailboat first?
No.
Okay, so you flew to what? Argentina?
Yes.
And then you took a boat over with like how many people? What was
Okay,
that
so
like?
we went. So there's many different ways, tourist type things you can do in Antarctica. There's some of the fancy, big, huge ships where there's 1,000 people, and they don't even actually go ashore. They just kind of drive by.
Go by
They
it?
just
It's like a
drive by.
cruise
Yeah,
almost?
cruise. There's cruises that go by there. Then there's smaller ships that do go, and you stay off the coast, and then you get into these Zodiac rafts, which are like these what the Navy SEALs use, and you go ashore. So that's the one we went on. It was a refurbished NOAA, National Oceanic and
Yeah, it's like a
Atmospheric.
research.
It had been a
boat.
research U.S. research ship, and then it was retired, purchased by a company in Argentina, and they made it a little more comfortable, but it was not like a luxurious cruise. I mean, it was comfortable, but it wasn't. And so, from Tierra del Fuego, which is the southern tip of South America on the Argentinian side, is a town called Ushuaia, and they claim it's the southernmost city in the world. Now, across the border in Chile, there's another one where they say but you know how it is. Anyway, from there, but a lot of people that go by ship, they go from there because that's the closest. It's still 600 miles from Tierra del Fuego to the northern tip of the Antarctic Peninsula.
How many days did that take?
And it was about 2.5, 3 days.
Okay.
And you go through the Drake Passage, which is known for being very treacherous.
Right.
It's because the Atlantic and the Pacific meet, and it creates all this turbulence. And so they said our journey was kind of medium, like it wasn't as bad as it could be, but it wasn't real smooth. So people got seasick. I had researched it, and we had these actual prescription patches that you wear that keeps you from getting seasick. Anyway, we got there, and we went ashore, and we did a bunch of stuff, and we distributed some books, and we did some kirtans. And
Of course.
And we did.
I want to hold it.
And so before we went, I designed the Krishna South flag,
Haribo.
and on the back is the ISKCON 50th anniversary. So if you go to the website, and you can see pictures of the flag with penguins and kirtan in Antarctica.
May I?
Yes.
This is too cool.
Yeah. So yeah.
So this has been there. This was there.
Yes, that was.
Did you hold it, or did you actually put it in the ice?
That was stuck in the snow.
Cool. And there was like a research station there that you stopped at? Or it would have been what?
Well,
up
yeah.
Here?
We were here.
Okay.
We were here, and this flag was right about there, but not near the
So
southern
cool.
tip. Yeah.
So Prabhu, I have to ask, so it was 2.5 days there, 2.5 days back. It's not a short boat ride by
No.
any stretch, and it's not an easy boat ride either.
No.
Of course, it's not as long as Srila Prabhupada
No.
took, but did you have a meditation on that?
Yes, it just so happened that the cruise left on the 13th of November from Ushuaia and started heading toward Antarctica through the Drake Passage, which was, a little bit rough. So on November 14th, we were on the ship, and we had Prabhupada Murti. And although, like today, we're celebrating Prabhupada's disappearance according to the lunar calendar, but according to the Gregorian or Western calendar, Prabhupada's disappearance is on November 14th.
Wow.
So we definitely had that meditation about Prabhupada's disappearance day, of the trouble that Prabhupada went to go across the Atlantic, and as we read in his diaries and so on. So we definitely had a whole meditation, especially on that day, and there's also a video in the in the website about that a little bit. So yeah, it was a very otherworldly experience in both materially, in the sense going to Antarctica is like another planet, and also the fact that we were doing this special mission. But I don't know if we should get into too many more details about that.
Okay.
I think we need to save that for if we can. I will tell one story that is leading up to it. And the reason, like today, we've also been trying to get Trivikram to do this interview for at least a couple of years. He's been down here for a couple of years, and we've been trying ever since he got here. So he's very hard to pin down. He's a wonderful devotee, and he's a musician. He plays the bass. He was in the group 108.
Yes.
And he's a music therapist, and his wife's a musician as well, and now he's got 2 kids. But back then, he was just a single guy, and it was hard to get a hold of him. So, I mean, I was making all these plans, booking all these tickets, putting everything on my credit cards and all this kind of stuff. And then, to be honest, that like when I was in the Gainesville airport, getting on the plane, and I was texting Trivikram, because even up to that point, I was like, I wonder if I'm going to be doing this by myself. Although he brought his Prabhupada Murti, so that would have been kind of tough. But I had a picture of Prabhupada just in case. I really didn't know whether he was going to show. So I'm in the airport, and then he texted me a thing from, I'm in the Boston airport, I'm flying to New York. And I said, all right. And we met in Miami, and then the rest is history. So we'll leave it at that.
I'm laughing at this because for those of you who know me, I feel like Trivikram is we're vibing.
Yeah.
We're like we have a similar style in that way.
Yeah. Anyway.
It's so special that you were able to share that with another person, right? That I mean, what an incredible adventure.
Yeah, no, just for the record, I'm a responsible married man, and I initially asked my wife if she wanted to go. She doesn't like the cold, even though she's from Michigan, but she doesn't like the cold, and she doesn't like the ocean. She thought it was a joke, and so I did. And so I thought, well, and Trivikram at that time, he wasn't married. He was the kind of work he did. He was kind of like an independent contractor with his counseling. And so he was able to get the time off and all that. And he's just a very unique person. I guess we're all unique people, but he's a very interesting person. And I couldn't really think of anyone else that I would have rather gone with, really, just because of the way we kind of came up with this whole thing and how it all happened. So maybe we'll actually get him in on the interview, and we'll go into some more details. A lot of interesting things and wonderful things, and definitely felt Prabhupada's presence, especially when we first brought Prabhupada ashore and did an arti and a kirtan on the 7th continent.
Oh, you performed an arti.
Yes.
Was it to Srila Prabhupada?
Yes.
On the?
Yes.
So nice.
Yes.
Okay, well, we can't wait to hear more. We really, really,
but
we must, actually.
For those that are anxious before then, they can go to krishnasouth.com.
Yes, krishnasouth.com, and there'll be videos and blog entries and everything
pictures
else.
And so many things.
So nice, Prabhu. Thank you. I was told that if we have a desire to travel, we can pray to Krishna. My dear Lord Krishna, if there's somewhere where you'd like me to go, I'm very willing. So it's really remarkable to see.
There were some, like I said, I go down the rabbit holes. I go pretty deep, so I get obsessed. You can ask my wife.
It takes that, doesn't it?
So I found some really great letters that Prabhupada wrote devotees that were going to far-flung places, and so it was very inspiring. It's like Lord Chaitanya wanted that we go to every nook and corner of the world, and if we don't do it, someone else will. So that's. Anyway, there's so many more. I'm going to control myself because there's lots of. Trivikram and I also are very jovial people, and there's lots of jokes and inside jokes and outside jokes that are all about the whole Krishna South thing. Just even the name Krishna South, for those we're in Gainesville, which is one of the headquarters of Krishna West. So anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Congrats.
Thank you.
So remarkable, Prabhu.
And I was able to make a presentation,
That's right. You made a presentation.
I made a presentation.
At MIT, right?
Yeah, this time they instead of Faneuil Hall, they had arranged things at MIT. So they had an auditorium. And they had senior devotees were speaking, and they also had some of the local Hindu temples and some local politicians. It was one of those kind of events. But I was given 10 minutes, and I only went over by 5. But I had a slideshow, and I had the flag, so I think it was well received.
Great. Thank you. So, Prabhu, let's go back. Let's go back in time.
Past life?
Yes, I brought in a past life regressionist. Not that far, but
Okay.
I did hear from you that you came into Krishna consciousness very young. Tell us about it. Like, what was your
Well,
early teenage
I would
years?
say spiritual quest very young. My parents were very liberal politically and socially, and my father worked for the federal government. We lived in a suburb of Washington, D.C. in Maryland. So I grew up, and I have an older brother who's about 5 years older and a younger brother who's about 4 years younger. So I got introduced to a lot of stuff like the Beatles from my older brother.
Yes.
So I got into the Beatles, and then there was the whole environmental awakening from like that Silent Spring by Rachel Carson. That was, I think, it came out in 1970. And then there was the Vietnam War going on. And so my older brother was all involved with all that, and my father was also very supportive. So we actually went down, just like now they had the No Kings March last week. And I was there in my penguin outfit.
Representing Krishna South.
That's right. But anyway, they said that's the largest protest in like the last 50 years, because in 1969, I think it was even a bigger one in Washington, D.C. So I went with my father and my older brother. I was like 11 years old. I went to this like the biggest anti-war protest in American history.
Wow.
So anyway, so I was kind of like conscious about the problems in the world. And, you know, in the 6th grade, I wrote a 20-page paper about environmental protection or something like that. Anyway, so I was just kind of like very aware of like the social ills. I think I want to do something that's going to make the world better. And so I was going to go into environmental science, maybe become a park ranger or something like that, because I also went backpacking and stuff with my friends. So anyway, so a friend and I, when we were 15, neither of us had a driver's license or a car, and we wanted to go hike the Appalachian Trail in the Smoky Mountains, which is in Tennessee, North Carolina, and we lived in Maryland. And my other 15-year-old friend, he had an older friend that was moving. We said that he was moving to North Carolina. That's what we told our parents. But he was really only moving to Virginia. So he said, oh, yeah, no, he's going to give us a ride down there. No problem. They said, okay, well, as long as you have a ride. Now, I don't even remember how we were supposed to get back. But anyway, somehow or other, like our parents.
How old were you?
15.
Wow. And you were, okay.
So we were 15. I was 15, and we hitchhiked. So we did leave with his friend and went on the highway into Virginia, which is just south of Maryland. And then he said, "Okay, I'm getting off here," and then we hitchhiked the rest of the way. And then we hitchhiked back. Anyway, so we were there, and in the Appalachian Trail in the Smokies, they have these shelters. They're like 3-sided shelters. At that time, they had a bear problem. So they had like a 6-foot or an 8-foot chain link fence in front with a gate. So like everybody had to stay in the shelters. So you had to at that time there were as many people doing it, so you kind of reserved like. So we ended up doing that, and in one of those shelters there was this girl sitting in the corner, with her eyes closed and her legs crossed, like for 15 minutes, and then I was like, wonder what she's up to. So it turned out she was doing meditation. And she was doing TM. She told us all about it. And we thought, oh, that's pretty far out. So we got back, went back to our high school in Columbia, Maryland. It turns out that the principal of that high school was a TM person. And so he was allowing the TM people to use the school like after hours to do these public introductory programs. So my friend and I, the same one, we went and we thought, oh, yeah, this is what that girl was talking about. We should do it. And then so the two of us and about 3 or 4 other of our friends, we all signed up. At that time, it was like you had to pay like $15 if you were a high school student for your mantra. We got our mantras.
Was it way more for other people?
It wasn't way more. I think at that time for adults, it might have been like 35 or it wasn't a lot.
Okay.
I don't know what it is now. I mean,
it was kind of like a membership fee.
Well,
Almost,
it's the idea was that they wanted people to make a commitment, and it was a part of their business model.
Okay.
So they charged, and they said that they give you individualized mantras, which is kind of true. There's a number of mantras, but there's a formula according to age and your sex. Anyway, whatever the case, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much. But so I started doing the TM, and they said when we did it that like you got initiated with the mantra, and you were supposed to like refrain from eating meat or taking any intoxication for 3 days before. That was their like regular principles for 3 days.
3 days before you received your mantra.
Yeah.
But okay.
After that, then it's up to you. But they said, of course,
Okay.
it's better. So I was already a vegetarian, but I gave up doing any intoxication when I was doing TM because I was serious about it. Like if I'm going to do this thing, and they say, they were saying like in 6 months you can become enlightened. So if I can do that in 6 months, that's worth not smoking marijuana anymore.
Right.
So my other friends, they weren't so serious. They continued their habits, but I was pretty serious about it, and I did it twice a day, and I was reading the books, and I was thinking maybe I should become a TM teacher because,
Wow.
to solve the problems of the world, you got to get to the root of the problem. It's ultimately, the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, it's based in Vedic paradigm. I mean, just from the Shankaracharya school.
Right.
So, there's a lot of similar ideas, the root cause of all problems are spiritual and from within. So I thought, wow, this is something. So I was going in that direction, and then I was going to go and be a environmental science major and be a park ranger meditating out in the mountains.
Yes, I can see it.
But the first semester on campus, outside the student union, there were the Hare Krishnas, and they were doing some kirtan. It's almost like Krishna lunch, but they didn't have a whole lunch. They just had like dried fruit and nuts and stuff. Prasadam.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had seen the devotees before with my family when I was also about 12 years old when we went out west. And I think it was 1970, and there was a kirtan, either San Francisco or Los Angeles. And we were just like, tourists, and I saw these people in the orange sheets jumping up and down, and I said, "What's going on over there?" And the parents but then that same trip, because I had an older brother, he and a friend were going to go to see the play Hair. Mm-hmm. And I said, "I want to go too." And they said, "Okay." So I went, and then they chant Hare Krishna. So somehow or other, that's how I got exposed.
Krishna follows us,
Right.
is it not?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then also before I met devotees, when I was in high school doing TM, somebody had gotten a Sri Upanishad from the devotees, and he knew that he wasn't interested as some other school person. He said, "Oh, I know you guys are in meditation. Here, take a look at this." So I looked at it, and I was just so much into the TM thing. All I did was go to the back where it had the Devanagari, trying to figure out in Sanskrit what my secret mantra was. I didn't read the book.
Oh, you were trying to use the translation of the Sanskrit words?
Well, in the back of Prabhupada's books, there's the Sanskrit alphabet.
like an index?
The Sanskrit alphabet.
glossary. Okay.
So I was just trying to see like what my mantra would look like in Devanagari, but I couldn't even read the book. I don't know why. I just didn't read the book. I went to the bookstore at the mall because I heard Bhagavad Gita was a thing, and so there was Prabhupada's Macmillan Bhagavad Gita. 800 pages with all the Sanskrit and all the wild color pictures. And I said, whoa, I want to read Bhagavad Gita. I don't know if I'm ready for this edition. So I put it back, and I pulled out the little Penguin edition that was, I think that time it was the Juan Mascaro translation. And I tried reading, and I couldn't figure anything out. Anyway, I met the devotees on campus. I read the Sri Upanishad, and just that very first, it's a transcription of a lecture from 1969 in London. Prabhupada says the teachings of the Vedas, and it's kind of just like a very methodical introduction to Krishna consciousness. And I read that introduction, and I was like, wow, I've been trying to meditate and read all these books by the Maharishi and all these other Upanishads and things. It never made any sense. It was always very cloudy and mystical. And then I read that one essay, and I thought, the light bulb went on or off, depending on how you use that analogy. The light bulb went on.
Yes.
And I thought, this is really something. So, again, I'd been a vegetarian for about 2 or 3 years. At that point, I was 17 when I met the devotees, and they were doing a cooking class in a dormitory. This was actually even before Radhanath Swami started doing cooking classes. This was devotees in Potomac Temple.
Okay.
And they were doing a cooking class.
In your college? At
Yeah,
your college?
in where I was going, and they were doing a cooking class. And I started going there, and like I'd been a vegetarian, eating just soybeans and very not so palatable things, because what do I know about cooking as a vegetarian at 17? So I started eating prasadam. It's like, wow, this is really something. So I was going to cooking class every week, and then they introduced the chanting. I got some japa beads. I was still doing my TM twice a day, 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes in the evening, twice a day. And then I started chanting japa. And I had been doing the TM like twice a day, like religiously, so to speak, for like 2 years. But like after about a month of chanting japa, I just realized that, wait a minute, I haven't been doing my TM. It's just like, it just kind of like went away.
Wow.
And I just was doing japa. And then I wanted to move in the temple. I wanted to drop out of school. I wanted to move in the temple. My parents said, "Nuh-uh, not while you're..."
You wanted to drop out of that semester of college.
Yeah, this was my first semester.
Got
I was
it,
doing
yeah.
science stuff for...
And you were only 17.
Yeah,
You were quite young.
I graduated 1 year early.
Yeah.
I went to an experimental high school in the 70s where you could write a contract and a proposal for like a half a credit for a whole year, like just one project. So I did 2 of those.
Cool.
To get my, the English credit, it's always like, you need 4 English credits.
Right.
Otherwise, I had all the credits I needed just after 3 years. I was a little bit of a smart aleck, or smart something. So I did that. So I started early in college. I was 17. And I said, okay, I'll just go back to school, but I'm going to switch my major to philosophy. I said, okay. So I took all these classes that I thought were going to be, like more in that mood. And
they would you thought they would satisfy your heart more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of them was like this ancient Mesopotamia, okay, like anthropology, anthropology. That should be interesting. But then, and I had been reading Prabhupada's books by now and going to the temple. So the first day, it's one of those huge lecture halls where they have the 3 blackboards. I don't know, I guess these days they use screens, but in those days they still use blackboards. And it was like this huge blackboard that went like 20, 30 feet across the room. The first day of class, the professor gets up with a big piece of chalk and he starts writing out S-P-E-C. He writes out speculation. And he said, this is how we know things in this field. And I've been reading, devotees have been telling me about, colleges.
That's hilarious.
The colleges are slaughterhouses and they're just speculating
It's all
about it.
speculation.
And it's like speculation. I said, wow, that's something. Then I did take a class.
You're like, here's my side. My days here are done.
Another class was about Indian literature or something. And it was by this guy who was like really obnoxious. There was actually another devotee, young lady who was not in the temple, but she was a devotee. She was in this class. And I said, hey, this is going to be a really good class. She said, I don't know about that. And he was just basically saying, well, I know there's a few of you Hare Krishnas in here. And Krishna's not very important. He's not in the Rig Veda and this, that, and the other. He was like, it was a pretty... Not a very palatable class. And I don't remember what the other classes were. But so I was going along, and I was like suffering, going to the temple, and the temple's like, you should just give it all up and move in. And my parents said, if you do that, you run away and you move in, we're going to call the FBI. So I didn't want to
Oh, wow. It was scary for them. They were worried. They were really worried.
They were worried because, this is 1975. And it was also the kind of the height of the beginning of the anti-cult deprogramming movement. So there's lots of bad things about cults, the Reverend Moon and the Children of God and all these kind of things like that. So I said, yeah, I really would like to, once you're 18, you can do whatever you want. But before then, you're living in, so I did drop out of school. I couldn't take it anymore. I said, well, that's all right. Okay, so I'll come home. So I was staying at home. And then I was going to the temple. And then they said, well, maybe you should see a psychologist. No. First they said, maybe you should see a rabbi, because if you want to get into spirituality, we're from the Jewish background. And I was bar mitzvahed and all that. So, because there's this rabbi, he's very progressive. He wrote an article called Yoga and the Kabbalah. They thought maybe I could get into like a Jewish spiritualism that would be a little more palatable for them. So I went over to his house, and he starts saying like, starts asking me if I've had girlfriends, and am I sexually frustrated, and this, that, and the other. And he himself is a bisexual. Like, this is the first time, like, I'm a 17-year-old kid. I'm going there because my parents want me to get some kind of counseling from a rabbi, and he starts talking about all this stuff. And I just kind of said, no, okay. I didn't really say much. I just, like, listened to him. And then I went home and told my parents. I said, I don't know if that's the right rabbi. Okay. So I told him, I said, anyway, I mean, not that there's anything wrong with that.
I understand.
My older brother came out as gay in high school, so it wasn't like they were like, my parents were homophobic or anything, but just the whole idea that.
Yeah, you were, yes.
Yeah.
It was a strange first introduction.
So then
certainly.
They sent me to a psychologist. And this was a woman I was 17, she was maybe 23, 24. I was like, she was a recent graduate. I was like one of her very first patients.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And she said, so I understand that you want to move into this ashram in the Krishna temple, and can you tell me about that? So basically, I just gave her my spiel and like about Bhagavad Gita, this, that, and the other, and I want to do something, get to the root of problems in the world. Otherwise, it's like putting, blowing on the boil, et cetera, et cetera. And it's gave her, the basic, Bhagavad Gita lesson, and she said, well, actually, it sounds like you have some pretty rational, reasonable reasons to do this. Maybe I should talk to your parents. And I said, yeah, maybe you should. So after that, my parents were like, okay, at least wait until your younger brother gets bar mitzvah, which was in April. So I stayed home, and I went to that, and then they moved in the temple a few days. But
was that so that you wouldn't so that you wouldn't influence him and that he would stay in the tradition? You think, or
I think it was just for him, for the family, and also for the family friends. Like, if they had the bar mitzvah for my younger brother, and they had all their family and relatives over, and it's like, well, where's Kenny? Mm-hmm. Oh, he's in the Hare Krishna cult.
Right.
So I think there was partly that.
You just kept the peace.
Keep the peace.
Yeah.
Don't rock the boat too much. But before that, and one of the reasons my parents were they were reluctant, but they agreed after I talked to the rabbi and the psychologist that that I wasn't diagnosed as like
a cult
a problem. So, but I was trying to maybe if the devotees come and talk to my father, they could
Oh my gosh! Yes. Okay.
So I won't name names because it's a devotee. He's a very wonderful devotee. He was one of the devotees that brought me to Krishna consciousness. He's also since passed away. He was a temple president. He was a little bit wild. He was a temple president in Washington, and so I was going to the temple. I said, "Let's go." Made an arrangement to drive up to Maryland to see my father, the two of us, the temple president, and myself, and we sat down in our living room, the three of us, and had a discussion. And my father was, pretty hardcore, agnostic and not really religious, and especially like cults, so that kind of thing wasn't. And so they got into a little bit of a heated argument. And this temple president, to my father's face, called him a demon. That was near the end of the discussion, as you well imagine. But then I got up and left with the temple president and went away. So it's like, I mean, I didn't make it easy for my parents to accept it. Later, that temple president moved on, and Rupanuga Prabhu became the president for a while, who's a much more mature and knows how to talk to people. And so they warmed up a lot after they met Rupanuga. And then eventually when I got married and all that, then they really, got a little. Then they came to temples. They went to some Rath Yatras and stuff like that.
So nice.
Yeah. So
I feel like it really is very different.
Yeah.
And sometimes I wonder, is there any way for someone who comes into Krishna consciousness, because coming from our backgrounds, it's like so much about you changes and you become like you everything is like you're in love with Krishna.
Right.
So for the people who've known you your whole life and you've been rebellious or you've been into this or that, it's just, like protesting against the government or like fighting for animal rights, and suddenly you want to like give up your college education and move into a temple. It's scary. It's so scary. And I wonder if like there's a way that you don't disturb the people around you, at least for like a little while in the beginning.
I mean, the thing is that especially during those times, in the late 60s, early 70s, and into the mid 70s, there was a lot of turmoil with, like I said, the environment and the Vietnam War, and just drug use and marijuana, LSD, all this kind of stuff. And there were just so many things, I mean, like I became a vegetarian. They weren't like thrilled about it, but I showed them I understood nutrition a little bit. So, but there were just things, and my older brother, like he also, like there was something called earth shoes back then, where instead of the heel going like this, it went the other way. And there was this whole big thing, like this is the way, like when you walk in the sand, this is the way your foot is, your heel goes down. So this is the way shoes should be. So I mean, my brother and I got into that, and we'd get into fights with my father about that. Because, you telling me that all throughout all history they got it wrong with the shoes, and now here somebody's coming. So, like that. So there were also lots of fads and different, the rebellion and all that. So, I mean, it was just that. And then, so, like I said, my brother came out as gay in high school, and at that time it wasn't very common and so that was a stressor on the family. And then I, became a Hare Krishna, and that didn't help.
Yes.
Then my younger brother, there's still hope for Dougie. Of course, he got bar mitzvah like a nice Jewish boy. Then he went off to college, and he met this girl and got married, and she was the granddaughter of a Baptist preacher from North Carolina.
I was going to say.
And so he converted.
He was a born-again Christian?
He converted, a Messianic Jew. He converted. And then his wife would come and basically tell my parents that they were going to hell. So the three of us...
Parents really got it.
The three of us put my parents through a lot. Now, fortunately, I mean... But then when I got married, and I was in Boston, and I was at the temple president there, and there was a legal case I was involved with, on behalf of the temple. My parents came up, and of course they loved my wife, and so things got a lot better. Yeah. And right before my father passed away, they came down here right after we moved down here, and got our own place, which was like a big thing for them that we got our own place. And it was my father's 75th birthday in October of 1995, and we were able to have him at our house, and we had a cake and all that. And then, like 2 months later, he just passed away in his sleep. But he had kind of like come around. Yes. And then my mom, who lived 20 years more than that, eventually she moved down here for her last 6 years, and she was over near Santa Fe College at the Village. And my wife and I were helping take care of her. So it all kind of worked out in the end. But we put them through a lot.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like they really cared about you, too.
Oh, yeah.
Like being a young person and being like, why don't you talk to a rabbi? That's super cool. Why don't you talk to a therapist?
Right.
Like, they didn't want to control you. They wanted you to understand yourself. And it sounds
like I said, I mean, during
cool.
that time, it was a lot of crazy stuff going on. Charles Manson.
Right.
And,
it was really...
And, LSD and all the hippie movement and, all these cults and things. So, and then the way the media played it up and all that.
Right.
So, I mean, you can't blame them.
Right.
But, I guess from our side, we could have been a little bit more diplomatic, but it all worked out in the end.
Yeah, my mom always tells me, I can't wait till your
Right.
kids are a little bit older and you
Right.
get a taste of what you put us through.
Yeah.
So...
But I was very fortunate because I was able to move in April of 1976 into Potomac. They had just moved the temple from Washington, D.C. And Prabhupada came. Only time he ever came to Washington was the end of June, beginning of July 1976. So I was there. And what was very interesting is, I'm a Jewish kid grew up in the suburbs, The only time I'd been to a farm is when my parents, we would go on vacations. We went to, these like, a working farm in upstate New York, and you go to the farm, and they show you, we're milking the cows, and then here's the chicken. So we went to the farm, and the only thing, they said, here's this chicken. It bit my finger. So it's like that was my experience with being on a farm, was getting bit by a chicken. But then when I moved in the temple, and they had an ox named Krishi. He was from New Vrindavan. He was a Guernsey ox, which is the same kind of oxen that we have here now in New Raman Reti. And they said, hey, Bhakti Ken, why don't you take care of Krishi? Okay. So I was taking care of the ox, and he did step on my foot one time, but it was in the soft ground, so it didn't break anything. But when Prabhupada came in July, or late June, early July, and there's pictures you can see where they brought all the devotees to, like a group picture, and I was there with the ox in the picture with Prabhupada.
Wow. That's so nice. So I had no idea that your service with cows started all the way back then.
Yeah. So that I was feeding him, and he was just like a pet. He wasn't being trained or anything. It was just like a pet cow, pet ox for the. Yeah. So then years later, I ended up getting involved with the cows here, and then the cow program 3.0, which is the one that's going on now. I was influential in getting the Guernsey cow and oxen because they're good, and also because of Krishi.
So let's go back to Cow Program 3.0 in a few minutes.
Yeah. But
is there something else that you would like to share about that visit with Prabhupada?
yeah, so I was a new bhakta, and they had known that the problems with my parents and all that. So even though I was 17, and my father is the one that actually dropped me off to the temple, and so it was like approved, but they wouldn't let me shave up until I was 18 because they figured, well, we don't know, So I remember I started out in the kitchen with Pushpavan, who's now here. He's growing the flowers at the temple here.
Okay.
So he was the cook, and my first service besides Krishi is I was washing pots for Pushpavan and learning Bhagavad Gita slokas. So I lived in the Brahmachari ashram there, and then the service that I had for Prabhupada was that they originally there was a pool because there had been a summer camp, the Potomac property, and there was a swimming pool, and with a fence around it, and they thought, Prabhupada could come out and sit in the evening, and so there was like a wicker love seat with some cushions on it, and that was my service to bring that out. And you also see in the picture with Prabhupada and devotees and Krishi the ox, you'll see Prabhupada sitting on that. So I had that service, and so sometimes when they said, Prabhupada's going to come out, and I remember one time I was bringing it out, and then Prabhupada was getting his massage in the room, and there was a big picture window, and I was on the outside, he was on the inside, and he turned around, looked at me. And then he would give out the cookies, and when he gave me the cookie, his fingers touched my hand, and that was very, I wouldn't say it was like an electric shock, but it was definitely an experience. And then talking about anniversaries, Prabhupada was there for the 10th anniversary of ISKCON. And they made a big cake, a big 10th anniversary ISKCON cake, and they brought it out to Prabhupada. And that's the Vyasa-san, you see the pictures. It's the white marble lotus, and you'll see the picture of Prabhupada there. And Prabhupada, cut the cake. And then he didn't speak, but he had Rupanuga, who was that time was the GBC for Potomac. And so he had Rupanuga tell the story about the beginning of ISKCON because Rupanuga was there. He was at the beginning. So that was very special. But the most amazing thing was, and I got to go on a morning walk on the Great Falls Park, which is not too far from Potomac. And I just remember the BI devotees were there, like the original BI. So like Madhava and Sadaputa, I think Brahmatirtha, Swarup Damodar. Maybe Rabindra Swarup too. They were there, and so there were a lot of science talk. So one morning walk going along the river, and then there was little nets and things, and Prabhupada would stop and say, the scientists, they say they can make life, but let them make one mosquito with pilot. But the big thing was, it was also the bicentennial of the United States. And there was a huge celebration in Washington, D.C., and the biggest thing was going to be the fireworks on July 4th around the Lincoln Memorial, that whole mall in downtown Washington where all the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, all that. So they said, let's bring Prabhupada there and we can have a kirtan. So we had a caravan the temple president had this big, it's before SUVs, but it was kind of like the precursor to SUVs. It was called the International Harvester. It was kind of like a big station wagon, but it was between a station wagon and a truck. And Prabhupada was there, and then the other cars were behind, and I was in a van with a bunch of the brahmacharis. And we were driving in, and there was so much traffic and so many people going to go to the fireworks that this traffic was slow going. So we just said, well, let's have the kirtan now. So we opened up the van and all the cars. And so we had this big kirtan, and so many people saw the kirtan just as we were going. And Prabhupada was very happy with that. And we got there, and we brought the wicker. I don't know if I was still on that duty. Maybe that was taken away from me. But they brought that out there, and Prabhupada sat on that. And the devotees said, Prabhupada, should we chant? And we were surrounded by people. And it was before the fireworks started. And Prabhupada said, just keep it quiet. He didn't want us to make a big. He saw this is the celebration for, at least this is my thinking. He saw that it was the celebration for America, which he was very thankful for, America giving him facility to spread Krishna consciousness, that he didn't think that it would be, proper to have a big ripper and kirtan to disturb. So we had very, very one little small pair of cartels and nice mellow chanting. It wasn't like a big, and we were sitting there in Prabhupada, and then it got a little dark, and then they started the fireworks, and then Prabhupada said, "Okay, let us go." And at some point, he made a comment. It's like the moth is attracted to the fire, he wasn't impressed.
Yeah.
So then we just went. But the best part was the kirtan on the way there. And Prabhupada was he wasn't leading the kirtan, but he was in the lead vehicle. And there was this big kirtan going on from the vehicles and going past.
It's like a Harinam.
Yeah, like
right?
a Harinam on wheels. And one other thing when Prabhupada was there was kind of funny. It was a new place, and they did have some laundry machines, but because we had so many guest devotees, they said, okay, we're going to, all the devotees that live here don't use the laundry machines for the guests and for, obviously Prabhupada's needs. So they said, okay, you take all the brahmachari laundry to the laundromat in the Potomac village, which is a few miles away, and take Bhaktin so-and-so's car, which was like a little Datsun. And so I said, okay. And of course, this is like the day after Prabhupada got there, and we had been up all night painting. Like Prabhupada always said, how come I always go to the temples and it always smell wet paint? Because we're painting the night before, getting it. So I'd been up all night or whatever. But I felt, okay, I'm good. So I load up all this brahmachari, tangled up dhotis and brahmachari laundry into the back of this car, and I'm driving along in this Datsun. And then this Bhaktin was actually the daughter of a U.S. congressman. And so that was something like, wow, better be careful with this car. Anyway, so I'm driving along, and then in a split second, I wake up having gone through a telephone pole, snapped the telephone pole right over the car. And I don't remember nodding out. All I remember was I was chanting the Panchatattva Maha Mantra. That's the last thing I remember. And the next thing, boom. And the car was totaled. The police came, and I was unscathed. And they said, somebody up there must be watching out for you. I said, yeah, but wait till I get back to the temple if they find out I totaled this girl's car. But somehow or other, because everyone was in so much ecstasy that Prabhupada was there, they said, okay, whatever. And I never heard about it again. Unfortunately, that Bhaktin didn't stay. Hopefully it wasn't because I smashed her car, but it was just kind of like,
Wow.
Normally, like a temple president would be on your case, well, how did you
How
wreck
could
a
this have
car?
happened?
Yeah, but it was there was no, So anyway, then we also got to go to New York, which is next year again, the 50th anniversary of the very first New York Rath Yatra. And Prabhupada came down Fifth Avenue, and I was there for that. And I hope to go next year to relive that experience.
Wow.
It was amazing. Prabhupada came out. It starts at the 59th Street and the Central Park and goes all the way down. And about the middle is 34th Street, where the Empire State Building is. That's where
Yes.
Prabhupada came, I believe, right around there. And I remember that, the thing stopped and Prabhupada came out and got on the cart. And then we heard this morning the famous story from Vaninath Vasu about the heckler at at Prabhupada's talk at Washington Square Park. I was there for that too, where there was a heckler, and Vaninath pushed the guy into the water.
Oh, I missed that.
Yeah, it's recorded in today's homages. Anyway, so that was very,
Wow.
that was a great experience. And so I was at that temple. I did some Sankirtan. We would go down to the monuments, the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. We were distributing carnations and BTGs. I wasn't really great at it, so I later became the temple commander. And then after that temple president had left and Rupanuga became the president for a while, he started talking to me about maybe I should think about getting married. I was like 20 years old. I was like, I don't know about that. So I mentioned it to some of my brahmachari friends, and they said, oh, no, you got to get out of here. So they said, there's what's left of the Radha Damodar party. They have a branch in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And let me call somebody I know over there. They said, yeah, you can go there. So I was a temple commander, and I had petty cash. So I had a little locker, and what I did was, I found out that I could get a bus from Potomac to Harrisburg for, whatever it was, $17 or something, So I took the $17, and I wrote a little receipt. I said, bus fare to Harrisburg, and I put it in the thing, and I left. I had a duffel bag, and in the middle of the night, I walked about 5 miles from the temple to the bus station, and then went to Harrisburg. Now, stupidly, I didn't tell my parents. And so there was a while that they didn't know where I was, and I was just so stupid that I didn't think to call them. So they were a little bit worried for a while, but then I kind of smoothed that one out. I did a number of stupid things. But anyway, then from there I was ended up being in a lot of traveling parties. I was on one bus for a very short time, but mostly vans, and we were distributing Back to Godheads and other books. And it was all over the East Coast. We actually came down to Gainesville in the winter when we weren't supposed to, because there was different zones.
Oh, so you weren't supposed to compete with each other?
Well, you were supposed to stay in your lane,
Okay.
This is Florida, we're going to distribute in Florida. You're in
Okay.
New York, you stay up there. But, we were Radha Damodar. We didn't believe in these boundaries. So we came down, and I remember as soon as we got to one of the welcome centers, I guess I-95, the first one, they had those souvenir shops. We got these little pendants. They were like little pennants, this triangle shape. And it was like Florida Gators, orange and blue, about this big. We pinned those on our shirts, and then we had our ISKCON ID. And so our line was, we're student volunteers helping keep kids off of drugs. Can you help out too? So that was probably not so good, but that was the wild days of Sankirtan. And we were giving them books and stuff, but just the lines were kind of
You were able to break the ice in some way.
But then later, so that was probably 1978, the winter of 1978, and I never thought I would end up being a Florida Gator. Ended up working there for 14 years. But anyway, so there we were part of New York, we were part of Gitanagara, we were part of Philadelphia, we were part of Baltimore. This was after Prabhupada left and the zonal acharyas, and there was lots of reorganization of zones and GBC zones and this and that. So we were just these brahmacharis. We started out, we were part of what was left of the Radha Damodar party, which had been basically disbanded. It split into two. Part went to St. Louis and part went to Gitanagara, and I was with the Gitanagara part, but then it became part of New York, and then so we were part of all these different temples. I got to stay and see a lot of different temples that way, and we just go out on traveling Sankirtan for a few weeks, and we would leave from you're part of Philadelphia, okay? We leave from Philadelphia, and then they say, okay, you're no longer part of Philadelphia. You should go to Baltimore. So we go to Baltimore. It's the same. Anyway. After all that, I ended up at 55th Street in New York, which also was wow, that was good fortune because that was the biggest thing going on at the time. That building and those devotees were there. There was 4 swamis there. I was never really good at getting up early, but somehow or other, when I was at that temple, there was 4 swamis. One of them was Jayadvaita Swami, and he said, "Can you wake me up at such and such time?" So I said, okay. So I okay, I guess I got to get up early because Oh, what it was is that when Radha Govinda were being bathed, we had 4 people. We would go behind the curtain, and we would chant the Brahma Samhita, the whole thing. And Jayadvaita Swami was doing that. So I was doing that. I got in on that, and that's how I kind of met Jayadvaita Swami. And then somehow or other, he got me to be his alarm clock for him. And then there was 3 other Swamis. They said, "Hey, can you have him?" So I was like, "I can't."
You were waking everyone up.
I can't. It boggles my mind. But somehow or other, for a while, I was waking up. I think it was Adi Keshava who was the president, and it was and Jayadvaita Swami. Somehow or other, I thought it was Bhakti Tirtha, but I thought he was famous for always getting up early. But anyway, there was 4 of them. Maybe even Brahmananda was there. I don't remember. Anyway, 4 Swamis. I was waking them up in the morning. I don't know. But then I started working with Ramapad, who was a brahmachari at the time, and he was in charge of Sankirtan department, and I worked in the Sankirtan department, but I was like the legal person because they had different places where they could distribute at the airports and the bus station and the train station. So there were these different permits they had to work out. And I was with the Port Authority of New York. And the Port Authority of New York had their offices in the way, way up in the World Trade Center. And so many times I had been up there, back in the early 80s or late 70s, early 80s. So then later, when 9/11 happened, I was like, wow, that's pretty intense, 'cause
Yes, you were there.
Anyhow, so I started working with Ramapad, and then at some point, they had this big, RV that it was a Barth, the brand. It's there's all these different, Winnebago and Barth. And so anyway, so they called it the Mahabharth because it was this huge thing. So Ramapad Swami and I and a couple of devotees, we used to start going up north from the city and visit people that had been writing letters. And
Wow.
a few devotees came from that.
People were writing letters in about Krishna consciousness.
People had gotten books on Sankirtan, and they
Okay.
lived far away from the temple, so they can you visit?
Wow, that's
so we
so
would go
wonderful.
and visit them, and so then based on that, I at the same time Sadhuputta was getting some work at some universities in upstate New York, and they wanted a brahmachari to go with him, just do get a little house and do. So for a number of years, it was just Sadhuputta and myself.
Wow.
And he would go do his thing with this professor, and I would, make some sweet balls and do some prasad distribution or some chanting, and then I would give some cooking classes and stuff like that. And then we had a little Sunday program. And we were in Ithaca, which is where Cornell is, and then he switched over to SUNY Binghamton, State University of New York at Binghamton, and we were in Binghamton for a few different places. And then eventually they kind of established a little center there, and I left and went back to New England.
So how many years were you a brahmachari for?
Well, officially, in dress, I was a brahmachari from 1976 until 1987.
Yeah. And most of that time you were doing Sankirtan?
I'd say about maybe a third of the time. I wasn't very good at it. It wasn't my thing. I didn't really. It wasn't my dharma. Mm-hmm. So people saw that I had some smarts in other areas, and so they started engaging me eventually. Well, it wasn't like, oh, these guys are so smart. It was basically after I kept coming back with very little results. They say, there must be something more useful for him to do. So
tell us about that. Tell us about your other services that you got to engage in,
so the first one was this legal service, which also is very it's weird because I was dealing with lawyers and with the Port Authority people, and then there was this one case, a court case, when the devotees were trying to get the rights to distribute at the New York State Fair, and so it turned into a big lawsuit. And I had got involved with that. So I'd never, I only had one job before I became a devotee. I worked part-time at a health food store, a GNC of all places. They're still around. Anyway, so I didn't have any like experience, but somehow or other I ended up working at the legal office, and then with this court case, and then with the Sankirtan department, and then when I went to after Sadaputa, I went to Providence, Rhode Island, which was still with Rompad Swami, and that's when they had a preaching center there, a temple, and I became the president there. So then I also started doing the books. So I kind of learned about bookkeeping. And then we did cooking classes, and we did, like, they had adult education things where they would call the Learning Exchange, where people could sign up for stuff if you wanted. So I did a couple vegetarian cooking classes. And
Do you like to cook?
Yeah.
Cool. I didn't know that.
And then some other classes, and we were near Brown University.
Okay.
And the first year that Amy Carter, she went to Brown University, and she actually signed up on one of our lists, but she never came to a program. So anyway, we did that, and then because of the court case, we eventually sold the Providence Temple because we needed the money for lawyers.
Oh.
And then I was really involved with lawyers, and it was a case of a former young lady devotee who was like also underage but had permission from her mom, but then later felt that she was mistreated. And then she left the movement, then she came back to the movement, then she and her sister were both devotees, and then her sister left the movement and had a problem, and then they decided to revive this court case that they had started like in 1977 when the young girl first left. So anyway, it was a mess, and I was involved with, I was a new temple president, I was getting married, and I had to go to hundreds of hours of depositions in lawyers' offices.
Wow.
Hearing all, and then this court case went on for 5 weeks, and ultimately we actually lost the case, and then it went to an appeal, and eventually there was a judgment against the temple, but it was a lot less than original. But in the meantime, we had remortgaged the temple, we had sold the Providence Temple, so it was a shame that we had to put so much money into that. But the temple survived, and I survived, and
I want to ask you about that. You said I survived. The world is an imperfect place, and I feel
really?
like...
How so? Yeah.
I feel like it's 100% a part of our maturation process in Krishna consciousness that we have to go through things that are challenging, confusing, strange, painful, what have you. How, like, looking back on your life in Krishna consciousness, how could you summarize how that happened for you? How did you, not just survive, but thrive? Yeah.
Well, like I said, I struggled with going out on Sankirtan, which took various forms. Sometimes it was going out. Back in those days, we didn't go out in dhotis at all. This was the mid-'70s. We basically went out in, street clothes and wigs, which was kind of, to me, it was kind of weird. Like, okay, so I'm coming to a place, and I shave my head, and wear these traditional robes, and then we go out and chant like that. But when you go to distribute, collect money and distribute books, we put on wigs and anyway. So but I was, some people were really good at it, and I was just never very good at it. So eventually, like I said, I did other service. So I don't remember like completely like being like in misery. Sometimes I remember later in traveling Sankirtan being out in the parking lots and just like, why, why am they having me do this? I'm not very good at it. I mean, I try. I mean, there was times when I there was times when devotees dressed up as Santa Claus. So I was a Santa Claus a few places, including New York City and Fifth Avenue at some point. And we also did traveling Sankirtan as Santa Claus. Like we'd go to like Reading, Pennsylvania and stuff like that. And there were some other ones. And then there was, at that time we were doing magazines and sometimes little knickknacks or something. And then it got into the records. I don't know, it's probably before your time, but this devotee Mangalananda that's here. So originally he made a record that was a really nice record. And so the devotees thought, why don't we distribute the records and then books. So we were starting to distribute records, and then they made a record in New York. Anyway, so it just I wasn't a good salesman. It wasn't really panning out for me. And eventually, I don't remember whether I ever asked not to go out, but I think they just realized, that's when in New York, they realized I had I could help Sankirtan through the legal office because I was, a college dropout. So I had some qualifications. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, it was, and there was some, that was an experience. That was a very interesting community. I mean, it was like a big community like here, but it was all everybody in one building.
Right.
And then later, and then I started doing that with Ramapad Swami. He saw like I was good with people, and so I started going with him like on these things. And he thought I'd be good for like college preaching, so that's why I did these centers. First in New York with Sadaputa, then later in Providence, Rhode Island, and then when I was in Boston, I helped devotees start doing some cooking classes there at MIT and I think BU, Boston University. So I was just kind of into that kind of thing, and I was doing prasadam. I like doing prasadam distribution as a way to reach people, because that's kind of how I got into it from when I was on campus. So when I was doing the things with Sadaputa and in Rhode Island, it was kind of like a mini Krishna lunch. First I would just do sweets, and then like one day a week I could get a table at the student union, and I started making like 2 or 3 things, and I would just give it out. And then we'd have cooking classes. So I just like that kind of thing. At New York, at one point, it was my mission to figure out how to do a restaurant. Boston. It's my mission to figure out how to do a restaurant in Boston, and I took a couple classes from an adult education place. And the conclusion was that it was too expensive to do in Boston. And we had a dinner program, but to actually do like a restaurant. So I've always been kind of interested in that prasadam.
Yeah.
I was going to do a prasadam business in Boston, my own. I was going to do a cart, because in Boston, out in the Boston Common and the Boston Garden, beautiful area near the temple, and with a lot of tourists and people go by there. And so they have these carts, vendors. They would sell, hats and souvenirs, and also, like hot dogs or whatever. So I was going to do a Govinda's Solarama cart. And it was a cart that I built myself with the help of devotees, mostly devotees that are here now, Jiva Goswami, and also Gargamuni's brother, Keshi Sudana. They actually, between the two of them, they actually helped me build this cart. And Madhava, you're Madhava from Krishna House, he was actually going to run the cart.
He also loves to cook.
Yeah,
He's an excellent cook.
He was going to run the cart. So I went through all this thing, and I built this thing. And we built it from scratch rather than just buying something. Like, why buy something when you can build it yourself? And it was like super heavy, and it had solar panels on the top. And solar panel technology has gone a long way. At that time, the only kind were like these real heavy duty, like heavy
It's like
weight-wise.
a 1,000-pound cart.
Yeah. So we had this cart with this thing that went on top, and it had the solar panels. And we had to get permits, and then we had to get like a legal. The temple kitchen wasn't like commercial, so we had to like say that we had to have like a license from this other commercial kitchen, and the cart was so big that I had to buy a truck that was big enough to hold the cart. So it was like, and then I finally got the permits, and then it didn't work out with Madhava. He couldn't do it, so it's like, so they never really got off
In
the
this
ground.
endeavor, there is no loss
No,
or diminution.
I eventually shortly after that we decided to move down here, and I sold it to I wanted to sell it, and I was thinking, oh man, I'm going to sell it. Some guy's going to cook hot dog. Turned out sold to a guy who was going to do popcorn. I don't know if he ever did it or not, but at least I felt, at least it's
The Solarama.
yeah. So yeah, almost forgot about that one. Anyway, then.
Well, tell us about Devaki, meeting her, marrying her, and then you all moved down here and you're serving together, right? You've been
Yes.
doing service together for a very long time.
Yeah. So it's funny because she also grew up in Michigan, like in a suburb. She didn't really have any experience with, they had pet dogs, but she didn't have, but when she went to like Huntington, she was at 55th Street. I had known of her, but I was a brahmachari. She was a brahmacharini. It wasn't like anything. But like I knew who she was. She was in Lake Huntington, which was when they sold 55th Street, big mistake. And they bought this place up in Lake Huntington for the Gurukul, which had also been a summer camp, but they lived there all year round, and they never really insulated the building. So, and there was, lots of women and kids up there, so that was smart. But anyway,
It was like freezing
Yeah.
cold. Yeah.
they had a team of oxen and they had a cow, and she got involved with that. She was milking the cow, and she would sometimes take the oxen to get the wood because they did put in, wood stoves, and she would.
Oh.
That was part of her thing. So then she ended up going to New Jersey, and then I ended up in Boston, and then, Pusharta and Tulsi. Tulsi and Devaki grew up together in high school in Michigan. They actually left together, moved to Connecticut, met the devotees, and both moved in 55th Street together.
Wow.
Anyway, so Devaki wasn't happy in New Jersey, in Tuwaco. And so she talked to Tulsi, and she said, I gotta move to another temple. How's Boston? And her husband, Pusharta, had been the temple president, but then he had some migraine issues, and so he had to step down, and I ended up being the temple president. So I was the temple president, and so Devaki asked Tulsi, how's the temple, and how's the temple president? Oh, he's pretty nice.
Oh.
So she came, and then
Wow.
around that time, I was thinking that I needed to change ashrams. At that time, I was maybe 29 or something, the ripe old age of 29. I thought, well, I'm going to get married. I probably should do it soon. And it's funny because do you also know P.R. Mohan from Hartford?
Yes.
Yeah, the magician.
I didn't know he was a magician.
Yeah. So he it was right around New Year's, because it was the thing in Boston on New Year's Eve. They have this thing called First Night, which is this big festival out in the city where all the stores, they put lights up. It's a whole thing, and devotees were going out and having these great kirtans. So he had come for that. And so the next morning I said, Piari, I've got something to tell you. I think I might be changing ashrams. And he thought Keshihanta's going to take sannyas. I said, no. So anyway.
Excuse me.
So it was an arranged marriage. It was arranged by the temple president. I was the temple president. But somehow or other now,
That's great. So you, okay, go.
Well,
Continue.
so previously other people had tried making arrangements for her to get married before, and none of them had worked out. So it wasn't like
Okay.
she was just some completely what I'm going to do, whatever. So she, somehow or other, I passed the test,
Aw.
and we got married. And she was doing pujari work, which she's still doing. She's been dressing Gornitai here every week, at least once a week, since 1993, except when we've been away or something like that. So
Wow.
that's a long time. So she was a head pujari. She did some cooking, and there was a flower business that was run by this congregational member that hired a lot of devotees. So she would just go out and sell the flowers, and it helped support the temple, and also you got some money out of it too as some compensation. And so then we got married, and the cart thing didn't work. The Solarama, the light went out on that one. And I was thinking, if we're going to be married and have a family that we really can't afford. We were living in these little apartments. At that time, it was $500 or $600 for a one-room apartment, like a basement apartment.
Mm-hmm.
And they were pretty austere places. And so I had been the president twice. That's a whole other story. I was the president, then I wasn't the president, then I was the president, and then I was the treasurer. And so I had learned bookkeeping. I had learned that actually as a brahmachari in Philadelphia. That's another story. But anyway, real quick, I was a Sankirtan leader. Even though I wasn't good at Sankirtan, I was a Sankirtan leader in Philadelphia. And then P.R. Mohan, who is a famous Sankirtan leader, a legend, and he was the treasurer in Chicago. And they were going to trade the treasurer of Philadelphia to the Chicago, and then P.R. came to be the treasurer. But when the P.R. got there, and they said, okay, here's P.R., this legendary Sankirtan leader who was the treasurer, and then you have Kesihanta as a Sankirtan leader who's not exactly General MacArthur or whatever. So they said, oh, no. P.R. is going to be the Sankirtan leader, you're going to learn how to do the treasury. So I learned how to do the treasury. But that kind of got me
Nice.
into a career idea. So after I wasn't a temple president anymore, since I knew a little bit about accounting, I went to school part-time for accounting. And I was going to get some kind of associate's degree in accounting because I was doing some accounting work outside, and I thought, I could do make some money as a job. It's, pretty easy sitting at a desk all day. So then we decided, we're probably going to move. We should probably move. And also the temple management changed and, how the different things. For whatever reason, Madhava was there. He was the cook and he was a pujari. He was leaving and I was leaving. So I thought, well, maybe we'll go and we'll check out North Carolina. We'll check out Florida. We had been here on a trip in 1991. Devaki and I and Piari and his family, we had visited through here. So I knew about Alachua, but it was pretty low-key at the time, 1991. So at the same time, this was going on. We're thinking about leaving, and then Ridananda Maharaj was going to Harvard, and so he was coming around, and therefore, wherever there's Ridananda Maharaj, there's also Brahmatirtha. So I got to know Brahmatirtha because he would come up, and then later, Brahmatirtha was involved in this. There was this flower business here called Daylily Discounters. I don't know if anyone has ever told you about that.
I remember.
Yeah.
I remember hearing about
So
it.
Brahmatirtha was one of the owners of Daylily Discounters, and some other devotees were working for him, and I won't mention their names, but you know who they are. Think about our videos. But anyway, they were working at Daylily Discounters, and they got in a fight with one of the managers, and so they quit. And one of them was doing the books. And so Brahmatirtha called me up. He said, hey, would you like a job? Working for a devotee company, this wonderful thing, Daily. I said, okay, well, I guess that makes sense. If you're going to already have a job, I may as well just go there. So we just moved down here. And we were living in the famous Alachua Villas down the road. And I was working at Daily Discounters. And Devaki had a bunch of different jobs until eventually she ended up at the library, Alachua County Library. But she worked at Daily Discounters for a while. She worked for Grain Forest, which was a health food store that devotees had for a while. She did the T-shirts at the welcome stations for a while. They used to do those. She had some other jobs, and then she was volunteering at the library, and then she got a library job, and she worked there for 20 years. So that's how we ended up down here. And then she started doing deity worship because she'd always been a pujari. And then she met the devotees that were doing the cow program, and they said, she said, I worked with the cows in Lake Huntington. So she started working with them in 1993. And they stepped down from there, running it in 1996. And so that's when Devaki and I took over.
Wow.
And we've been doing it ever since.
Wow. Almost 30 years. Just coming
and
up.
she's done about 80%, and I've done about 20%. I've always been keeping the books, doing this. I've gotten a little more involved in recent years, but she's been slugging it out literally with the cows for ever since then. Going from when we first came here, there was 46 animals and not enough land and not enough hay and all that kind of thing, to now we've got a reasonable.
How many cows do we have?
Right now we have 3 oxen and 3 cows. The cows are retired. The oxen are working.
Yes, I've recently learned some very valuable things about working oxen.
Yeah. So
what are some?
So she didn't know what she was getting into when she married me, because the first thing we did after the court case was over, it's okay. Then I stepped down as temple president, and then I said, let's go to India for a while. So we saved up some money, and we got legally married in 1987 in Boston, and then we moved to Hartford in 1988 and got our fire sacrifice there in May. And then in September, we went to India for 3 months, the two of us, and we got a 2-month train pass. And so basically for 2 months we were going we did the Char Dham by train, Badrinath, Puri, Rameshwaram, Dwarka, and many places in between.
Wow.
And then ended up in Vrindavan. And so she found out that I'm kind of adventurous. That was her first time to India. At the time, there was these Lonely Planet guides, and they've gotten a lot better. But when they first started, they were very like hippie-ish. Like all the places, there was like guides for hippies that were like. I didn't realize that, so I was using that book, and the first hotel we got into in Delhi, it was just horrible. And that was her first experience of India. So I was like, oh, my God. Anyway, but then we moved down here, and we've been doing the cows. And I was working at daily discounters. Then that business was sold and closed down. And then I worked with Radha Jivan's business, Sacred Threads. With Ram Govind is still doing it, right?
I believe so.
Yeah. So I was there for a while, and then that's when I decided, okay, this accounting stuff's okay, but I want to do something a little more with my intellect. So I'd known Garuda for a long time, Garuda, the Prabhupada disciple from the scholar.
Okay.
So I talked with him, and he said, well, we've got this distance education, which was like a new thing. This was like around the year 2000. It was pretty brand new. And they had one of the first degrees that you could get all online. So it's in Virginia, but I was here. So they accepted some credits that I had from before, and I needed to do about 2.5 years, and I did it all online without ever going to the campus. And then we did go for the graduation. So I got a degree in philosophy and religious studies, and I wrote a paper about Achincha Beta Beta Tattva, and I got a distinction on that, and I actually graduated summa cum laude. And then I got into the program here at UF in the religion department for going for the master's degree, and I was there for one semester, but it wasn't my cup of tea. So I was like, oh, what am I going to do now? My wife, who had been working at the library and also saw how I did the online degree for my undergraduate, she said, well, you like being in the university atmosphere, and you did really well with the online. You know that the library degree, since there's no College of Library Science at UF, that everyone in Gainesville, they do it at FSU, but it's distance education, like what you did. And so I checked into that, and so I did that. So I did, while I was working at Sacred Threads, I was working part-time, and I was doing that degree. So I finished that, and then I got a job at UF in the fall of 2006. And I started working in the library, which is like I knew about Christian lunch. I was a devotee, but it was very convenient. I was right next to Christian lunch, and I started hanging out with the Christian lunch folks.
Yeah, that was the year I told you that Adhikarta Prabhu in the beginning of the year approached me with the book. Yeah. So we started Krishna lunching.
Yeah. Well, it was also when Kalakanta came. It was the same year Kalakanta came.
Right.
Because before that, actually, I'd worked a little bit with Savya, Sachi, and I had known Dara Brahma. But I started working helping with the treasury when Kalakanta came.
That's right.
He and I were friends, and at the time, I was able to get a parking spot when I was working. So that was like, okay.
Like
yeah.
gold right there.
So I had my parking spot, which is like, I didn't tell too many people at campus that, because they'd be too envious, because that's like a whole thing, traumatic thing for most people that work at UF is to find parking. So I had like a parking spot, like 5-minute walk from where I worked. So that was good. And, Christian lunch whenever I felt like it, and started helping out. And then, of course, we worked on some projects together that were fun.
It was so wonderful, having your association and Madhava Prabhu and Purushartha Prabhu, right? Like constantly encouraging us, engaging us. Yeah. We did some filmmaking together.
Yes. Well, we did some that was more directly Krishna conscious.
Yes.
You had started the video yearbook in the first, and you were obsessed with what was that called?
The Real World from MTV.
Which I did not even know what it was.
I was like, we need to start a real TV show, Real World Krishna House. Like it needs to be a thing.
Right.
And so you helped us make that dream come true.
Yes, we did that. The opening of that was the Real World, And a friend of mine from high school who was a guitarist that plays like surf music.
That's right.
We used his. I got permission from. Anyway, and then we also made a fundraising video, which was apparently very helpful for the raising the money on the plaza, the Krishna Lunch Forever video.
Yes.
And that was fun. So yeah, dabbled in some video making, photography, and so working with the cows. That's one of the reasons why I'm wearing this T-shirt.
Not my pasture, not my problem.
Yeah. So I just saw this a farm store where we buy our grains for the cows, and I thought, okay, I got to get that because it was on sale. And I was like, okay, so basically, you learn from cows, like they're doing their thing, and something else is going on. They don't, that's somebody else's thing. You don't need to get, so. It's also like the whole thing from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. There's your circle of concern, your circle of influence. So it's like sometimes you just have to you can't get involved with everything. If it's not your dharma, then it's not your problem. Obviously.
Wow. No, that's such a valuable piece of advice,
obviously,
honestly.
if someone's about to fall off a cliff, you don't. There's a joke. I don't know if it's still around in ISKCON, but when I was a younger devotee, it was like, Prabhu, can you come and help wash the pots? Sorry, Prabhu, that's not my service. Yeah, so it's not like that, although to an extreme it could be, but it's just kind of like, not my pasture, not my problem. I'm not going to take on all the problems of the temple or the world or whatever. So, so I don't know how I got onto that.
But you mentioned that it was something that you learned from working with the cows.
Oh, yeah. The cows just, they just kind of mind their own business. Mm-hmm. They're concerned. They see one of the other cows going, what's going on? They don't, get too involved. Mm-hmm. So, working with the cows has been a struggle. Initially, it's like mostly Devaki's been doing it, but I've always been like keeping the books and battling with the elements, which can be everything from the weather, like there was periods of drought when hay was very expensive. Then there's also, I tell devotees that come from other parts of the world and they want to know about cow protection. I say, well, if you want me to be completely honest, that in Alachua, one of the main things about cow protection is protecting the cows from devotees. And what we mean by that is that, for one thing, sometimes devotees have a very romantic and naive idea about cows and milk and all that. And they think, why don't you have like hundreds of cows? And why aren't you supplying milk to the whole world? And these kind of things. And so, if devotees that don't really know about cows are allowed to make those kind of decisions, then you're going to have problems. And there's been a lot of problems in ISKCON with farms where they have too many cows, and some very unfortunate conditions came about where cows were actually mistreated or even starved and things like that. And so we're very cautious. We're very stubborn. We've learned that also from the cows, to be very stubborn. And sometimes even from the temple management, there's pressure about more cows, more this, more that. So our position is that we're trying to just keep things in the maintenance mode at this point. We're not against expanding, but we've tried to engage younger people from the younger generations, and it's just not a big interest, And so those that are really interested, they're going to do it on their own land because it's Alachua. So we're trying to keep it very manageable and small because we've been there, done that when we had 40 animals and not enough hay and all this kind of thing. So, and it's like, oh, but the Indian man wants to donate a cow. And he was like, how come we can't donate a cow? I said, because we have all the cows that we want to take care of right now, because a cow in Florida will live 20 years. We're not, we're in our 60s and 70s, so we're not going to bring in new cows. And we don't have there's not a lot of young people that really want to dedicate themselves to that, so it's not responsible. Oh, but we'll pay the money. And there's one guy, he even says, well, if you're not going to accept my donation for a cow, then I may not give any other donations to ISKCON. I said, okay. You can't blackmail us into getting a cow. Get your own cow. Get your own land. Start
Right,
your
because
own
you
ghost.
want to, that's the point you're making, is that in order to actually protect the cows, you have to be able to provide for them.
Right.
They become your dependent.
Yes, exactly.
So it's not the initial saving a cow from slaughter, which
Right.
is wonderful.
Right.
It's their entire lifetime that
Right.
you're taking care of.
Yeah.
So you have to do that very responsibly.
Yeah, and especially the idea the cow program 1.0 was back in the 80s, and they had a whole bunch of devotees, and they had a whole bunch of oxen, and they were plowing the fields, and they even had a business where they were importing and selling ox equipment, and it was a whole
Wow.
big thing. But then the management changed. There was some problems. All those devotees left, and then one couple stayed, and they were taking care of the cows. And they started Save the Cows around the same time that they started Adopt a Cow in Gitanagari back in the late 70s, the late 80s. And because they started Save the Cow as a separate fundraising thing, because at that time there was like 50 cows, and there wasn't enough money for the hay. And so they went to the temple office to get the money, and we're sorry, we don't have it. So they actually started the whole Save the Cow as a separate little thing within the temple to raise money for the cows, to feed the cows, because the temple wasn't taking the responsibility. Mm-hmm. And so we've been kind of like, there's always been a little bit of a tension. Right now it's a little different, but there's always been a tension between the cows and the cow program and the temple management, which is very common in a lot of ISKCON projects, unless the project itself is the project. But when it's mixed, it's a lot. So they started Save the Cow, and they did it for a while, and then eventually we inherited it. So that's like 2.0. And we came, there was like 40, and then we were still breeding cows and milking cows until after a few years, Devaki and I realized that we're getting older. Now that we know that you take care of cows in Florida, they'll live 20 years. Like, who's going to, we don't want to like leave a burden, like make a big herd and then walk away because we're retiring. So, we were trying to get younger people to come forward. It wasn't happening, so we just gradually stopped breeding the cows. And then gradually the cows were passing away by natural, they're getting old and passing away. And so Devaki and I were like, okay, let's just retire from that service and retire the herd, because there's really not, it's like, and they were talking about building new temples and building new restaurants and building, taking land for this and land for that. So it's like, whatever. So it doesn't, we don't have to have cows, it just doesn't have to have cows. So there was only a few cows left, and we were taking care of them. And then Prabhupada wanted this and Prabhupada wanted that, and we need to have this eco farm, and we have to get cows, and we have to do that. And I said, whoa, wait a minute, who's going to take care of the cows? And for a while, there was this idea that one devotee who's actually doing some farming, that his son was going to come from, he was in France, he was going to come and do it. That's never happened. And it's like, look, we're not doing it because we're getting too old. And, you've got to have some younger people. So somehow or other, a young person came, and she was dedicated to doing the cows, and she's also an animal person. But then things changed, and eventually, first she was like the face of the program, but then her domestic life changed, and there was an issue, so she couldn't be like the person. So then Mukhi asked me to get involved again. And I said, okay, only for a little while, and I want to turn it over to the younger people. Okay. And then we established certain rules, which haven't necessarily been 100% followed, but the rules to say, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be like this. We have a separate management and some other things. And so we started, and we got a few cows, and we had a whole thing. We're never going to have more than a certain number of cows, because you can show, like, if you always want to have one of the cows getting milk, and you have to breed every 2 years or so, and then they live 20 years, and we have so much land. So we had a whole plan, and we started it, but then this young lady couldn't do it anymore, and then she got someone else, and he came also from North Carolina, and he did it for a while, but there was different reasons why he couldn't continue doing it. And so we were like, okay, well, we're not going to, So we bred the cow that we got, and then we got she gave a bull calf. We got another calf for him, And then there was a love child. And the cow jumped the fence to the neighbor. So we ended up with
Oh, with the neighbors.
the neighbors. Yeah. So
Oh.
that's how we got those four cows. The other one, Sarabi, who was at your wedding.
Yes, when she was
Yeah.
quite young.
So she was the cow that they originally got, Kuti and them got. And then Pooja and she's a Gir Brahma Indian cow. And then there was another Indian cow who was living in near South Florida. It was somebody that Mukya knew, and they lost their land, one of those stories. So we took her in. So that's how we got those two Indian cows. And we bought the Guernsey, Padma, and she gave birth to Nimai, and then we got Ram from somebody else, and then we got Madhva, who's the love child. He's literally
So those are the three oxen.
yeah,
we're
and
talking
he's
about
a
now.
dark, so he's like the dark sheep of the herd. So
And they're actually being trained
yeah,
by
but then
Chinese
yeah,
Prabhu.
so then after the second devotee couldn't continue with the service, so then we realized, wait a minute, there's somebody, because we've been working with like Akuti, like we're not the cows and the eco farm like are not, it's not all one. It's like two kind of separate things that live together.
Right.
So Johnny Ty had been working with her, and he was like interested in the cows, and it turns out like he's the guy. So
Wow.
fortunately, Shamasundar from the manor, who's like a really great, he was the minister of agriculture for ISKCON for a while, and he was basically there when they organized and built a $5 million goshala at the manor. So he's definitely, so his daughter lives here and had a baby, so he'd been coming. So it's like, wait a minute. So Shamasundar, we paid for him an extra trip for him to come over, and he trained Johnny Tai and the oxen in 2 weeks, and then now they're working. And,
Wow.
and Johnny Tai also just went to Europe for a conference where Shamasundar was there in Hungary at Shivaram Swami's place.
I remember when I don't know how long ago it was, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, but for some time, maybe that was when he was here. They were training, and Johnny Tai was driving the oxen up and down the road, like even to the temple
Yeah.
and back in front of the school. And the kids were like,
Yeah.
wow, that's so cool. And I'm wondering, maybe that kind of like repeated exposure
Right.
is where the next generation can find their
Right.
inspiration.
Well, the when I got involved, we formed this group. We actually have a mission statement. Part of it was that our cow project was never going to really be a Vaishya project per se. It's not like a production. It's more of a Brahminical.
right.
It's part of the eco teaching farm. So there was this whole idea that we could teach about cow protection, and we were going to work closely with the school. Unfortunately, one of our previous people that was involved with the cows, he put the kids came over for something in the barn, and one of the cows was in heat, and when cows go into heat, they get pretty wild. So there was an unfortunate incident. Fortunately, no one got hurt, but it could have been really bad. And I think because of that, I think the school's been a little bit more like cautious about getting the kids too close to the cows. Because the original,
Well, the school is one thing, but like individual families.
yeah.
is
Well,
another,
I mean,
especially with older
yeah.
teenagers.
Well, so we bring a cow to the Sunday feast and all the festivals. People can feed the cow. Johnny ties almost every Sunday now we're doing the cart
Yeah.
ride. So we're doing that a little bit.
Yes.
If some people actually get inspired and come forward, I'm not saying like, it can never be more than what we did. But right now we've got the brakes on.
Yes, and I don't think it needs to be more, but it would be really cool if I'm sure eventually Johnny Tai Prabhu will have pupils.
We
and
hope
how
so.
cool would that be
We
for
hope
them?
so. We hope so.
Yeah.
But like I said before we started, like this devotees that were here briefly in Gainesville, one of them grew up in Finland. And Finland is known, they do these things like the happiest country in the world, and there's some questionnaires or something. Anyway, Finland has come out on top for the last 8 years as the happiest country in the world. So I said, Prabhu, what is the secret? And he's kind of, he's originally from Kazakhstan, but he grew up as a kid, so he's in a real deadpan way. He said, we have very low expectations. So there's something to that.
Yes.
I mean, you can look at it as like, well, that's just the mode of ignorance. But you can also, if you look at it in a different way, there's a Brahminical quality of being satisfied.
Yes. Yes.
So, of course, you want to do big things for Krishna and all that. But personally, if we set our expectations too high, then we're setting ourselves up for failure because
Yes.
it is the material world. People are the worst, according to Jerry Seinfeld. And devotees are people too, meaning that you have the best and the worst, a big spectrum of humanity, and that same spectrum comes into Krishna consciousness. And we know from the history of the world and the history of religions and the history of ISKCON, you've got wonderful saintly people, and you also have horrible people that do horrible things.
And even like within myself, I have my
Right.
best qualities and I have my worst qualities, and I bring all of that
Right.
into my service and into my
Right.
relationships.
So the idea is like, there's always this, there's a certain mood like, oh, Prabhupada wanted this, we have to do more, double it and do more and more. That's all there, but Prabhupada was also very practical, and there was times when he saw things were expanding too fast. There's a famous boil the milk letter.
Right, right.
So my experience is devotees like to take quotes from Prabhupada out of context, and they, put it on a flag, and that's their thing. But you have to look at the whole context, and you have to look at the other things Prabhupada said about the same thing. It's time, place, and circumstance. Yukta vairagya. You got to take all these things in consideration. And enthusiasm, according to the Nectar of Instruction, enthusiasm means action with intelligence. Without it, it can just be the mode of passion.
Yes.
It's very easy to create,
Yes.
but to maintain is very difficult, and it's not sexy. It's
Right.
hard to raise money. We've got this great thing, and we're just trying to maintain. Please it's like people want to see, I want to build a new
Right.
thing. I want
That's
to build
where the rubber meets the road,
yeah.
isn't it?
Maintenance. Yeah. So we're in a good place right now with the cow program because we have a good person that's really enthusiastic.
Yes.
But he gets compensation from the temple for his service for the cows. He also works with Kuti with the eco farm. He also has a family. So there's a lot of things, and so we're hoping he's long term, and we're hoping that it gets more people come and get involved. But my experience and my life lessons from everything from Finland to Seinfeld and from Srila Prabhupada's books, of course, is I don't want to have my expectations too high. And I find that if your expectations are too high, even for yourself or for others, then you just get upset about everything. Like, it's like just drive around anywhere in this country. Just drive around a little bit and see the way people drive and stuff. You just got to expect that people are not paying attention. They're on their phones. They're not. Don't expect things to be great. It's like, and even in temples, but how come the devotees aren't doing it? How come it's like, we just have to do what we can. We need to be a positive force.
Yes. Stay in our lane. Stay in our pasture.
And do our service and be encouraging to others. But I don't know. Devotees can, and myself too. You can work yourself up into this thing, just like, for example, sometimes. Well, we did it in videos, but even when you give a class, let's say you're going to give a class, and I don't give classes anymore, but for whatever reason. But anyway, if you give a class and you plan it out, and then you do the class or the presentation, and it's just like it wasn't just what you thought it was going to be. Everyone else probably might have thought it was a great class, but
Right.
but you know that the class was like here, and everyone was like, wow, that's a great class, but you were like, I was going to do this. So it's like it can also be discouraging to yourself.
Right.
Just like, if you're a perfectionist, then that's like one devotee discussion group that I participate in. One of his the mantra he gives for his disciples and students is, it's more about direction than perfection.
So let me ask you this, because what you're saying to me right now is extremely helpful. Okay, I'm wondering,
Well, I'm glad this session was helpful for you today.
But I'm wondering, has this been have these been hard learned lessons for you too?
Yes.
Like, do you feel like you've
Yes.
learned this very slowly and painfully over time, or do you know what I'm saying? Or do
Well,
you?
I mean, not. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. Yeah, for example, I put a lot of time and money and effort into building that Govinda Solarama cart, and that was going to be like, I was supposed to do a restaurant, I can't do a restaurant, but I got this thing, and it's got Govinda on it, and it's solar powered, and it's prasadam, and it's in one of the greatest spots in Boston. And it was like, I don't know, at least 2 or 3 years of getting to that point, and then it was like hassles getting permit. You had to get a permit from the health department. You had to get a permit from the park. You had to get a fire permit. I finally got it all, and I got not the best spot, but a pretty decent spot. And then the personnel thing didn't work out, so that was a pretty disappointing thing. I also tried to do my own business as a devotee 3 different times. Once by myself, once with Kalakanta, and there was a third one too that I did myself. And so again, it's like you have this idea and you want to do this thing, and it's like on paper it's so great, and then you put a lot of time and effort into it, and then when you actually do it, it just doesn't really work out. So it's painful, but you just learn. Like, okay.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean that you give up and you don't do anything, but you just kind of like try to have more realistic expectations. Sometimes Krishna does the opposite. Like going to Antarctica it started out as a joke. Then it was like, how is this possible? How are we going to do it? And then we did it, and not only we did it, but we, as you'll find out in a later episode, stay tuned, or on the website, that we actually exceeded our expectations.
Right.
And so a lot of times that happens too. So it for whatever reason, at a certain time, Krishna withholds.
Yes.
And sometimes he showers you. Like Prabhupada said, there's a saying, something like, if Krishna wants to give you, don't have enough hands to catch it all. And if Krishna wants to take it away, you don't have enough hands to protect it. Something like that. So,
Wow.
It's,
Yeah.
I mean, you could say it's, painful. I mean, I've gone through a lot of ups and downs, therapies and medications included. And just like Yogeshwar, I was happy to hear what he said this morning because,
Yes.
about therapy, because there's in society in general and within devotee society, there's a stigma about that. And I can say from my personal experience, I always had that same thing, like, well, if you just chant Hare Krishna, why? But I now believe in brain chemistry, and I've gone through a period of years of different things, and not only brain chemistry, but also gut chemistry, and they're very closely related.
Yes.
And it took a number of years, and at least for a while now, between diet and exercise and some medication and meditation. I think it's a good balance, and I've tried like, oh, now I don't need this anymore, and then it's you gotta do what you gotta do, and just like Yogeshwar is saying, it's like, well, you break your leg, you go to the doctor, you have a toothache. So like, why you think that if there's some problem with your brain or your mind that oh no, that's Maya, that's not Yukta Vairagya, that's fanaticism.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's lessons to learn along the way, and definitely everybody has the cycles in their life, ups and downs, and sometimes it appears to be almost like a bipolar thing, to the point where it's like you're really on, and then somehow, like I was doing really well, and then I got in a car accident, and that kind of like threw me off for like 2 years, and it took a while, but somehow I'm back.
It's wonderful.
And planning some other adventures, which we'll not disclose at this point.
Really?
But the bipolar joke is, okay, so you went to the South Pole, now you have to go to the North Pole. But there's nothing up there. There's no land up there. The North Pole is just ice, and there's no like stations even. There's just ships that go up through. So there's really nothing there. Antarctica is a whole other story, which we'll get to another time. And also, like after we went there, there's been some other great Krishna conscious things that have happened since then.
Really?
Yes. I'm not going to say what they are.
Okay. I'm really excited to hear about it.
Yeah. So that was exciting. So that was the thing. It was But the other thing I realized, going back to both Antarctica and to some other things, and even the projects that I'm working on now, is that there's the verses in the Gita about how the Krishna says, "I am the fire, I am the ghee, I am the mantras." So the preparation, all the paraphernalia is also Krishna.
Yes.
And like the Antarctica trip itself was only 15 days, but I worked on it beforehand for 15 months, and I was like
Yes.
I really got a lot out of that, because in other words, like, not that there's any comparison, but the whole idea, like when they called the first volume of the Lilamrita Lifetime in Preparation, it wasn't that Prabhupada wasn't like enthusiastic or Krishna conscious, and then until he came to America,
Yes.
his whole life was, so it's like just doing things take a lot of preparation.
Yes.
But that preparation it's not necessarily just about the result, although we want the result for Krishna, but also the actual, you have a right to perform your duty, not the right to enjoy the result. So Krishna gives the result or not, but just doing the thing. And then I realized also lately, so I worked at the university for 14 years in the library, and then I retired, and since I've been retired, I've been like really busy, like so many projects. It's been nice. But I'm doing so many projects, I'll never finish them. But then I thought, okay, well, as long as some of these projects I'll never finish are Krishna conscious projects, serving Prabhupada, then that means that, because, Prabhupada said, like, if you have these desires and you die, then you have to come back and, you into the building a skyscraper building, and then you come back as the cockroach in the building. So I don't want to just have all these mundane projects, so I have to come back and finish those projects. But if I have Krishna conscious projects connected to serving Srila Prabhupada, then it doesn't matter whether I finish them or not, because if Krishna desires, then I'll get a chance to continue serving Prabhupada in that type of project in another life.
Yes.
So it's all about, taking it day by day and doing something that you love for Krishna, and sometimes doing things that you don't love that need to be done, do the needful. But ultimately, that's devotees need to, well, there's a saying, you don't should on me, like don't tell people what they should do. But it seems like devotees that are happier are devotees that find a service and a balance that works for them, rather than like thinking, well, Prabhupada, because Prabhupada, Prabhupada set very high standards, and also Prabhupada gave us, all of us, many generations, lifetimes and lifetimes of service of so many projects. He wanted book distribution, he wanted varnashram, he wanted education, he wanted this, he wanted that.
It's endless.
It's endless.
Yeah.
Right.
Intentionally.
Yes. So out of all those things, of course, there's economic. Most of us are going to be householders and have families, and we also need to have our income and so on and so forth. So it's a balance, but some kind of occupation that you can at least tolerate, if not enjoy.
Yes.
And also connected to Krishna if you can, or the results connect to Krishna, or a situation that, even though it's a job and it's not so horrible that it takes all your time and energy, so you can't do anything else. But even if it's a job that you can tolerate, but it gives you time for, like sometimes people want to go like they get a little envious, like, how come I only get paid so much, but this manager, and I was experienced that because I worked very closely with this lady. When I first got my job, she was my boss, and she first started getting on the tenure track as a librarian. And my God, I saw, because I was going to do that at some point, and then I saw, it's not worth it.
She has to work so much, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so, and the thing about, like, oh, how come the upper management? I mean, of course, nowadays there's these CEOs and stuff, they get way too much for what they do. But in general, when you look at these people that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's not there's a cost there. They're giving their life, they're giving their energy. So so my understanding as for a devotee is, if you have a balance, I mean, first of all, if you can get the right education in the field that you want, you can make a decent living.
Yeah.
But not the kind of job that's going to like consume you 24/7, because then where's there time for Krishna?
Right.
And your family, et cetera, et cetera. So
Right.
I don't have all the answers, but I had a lot of questions. And the question is how to do that. And some devotees are, more successful than others. And if you look at devotees that are happier, it seems that it's because they've been able to balance different parts of their lives. There may be a few that are going to become, renunciates and sannyasis,
Right.
but that's, not for everybody. And even sometimes that doesn't work out. We've seen in this movement and in the world.
Thank you so
So-
much, Prabhu.
It's been fun.
I've gotten a lot of really great takeaways, like slow and steady, commitment, accept that life is full of ups and downs.
Right.
Don't be surprised by it. Take care of yourself, right? Also, we're all engaged in so many different types of services, and we work, our services are generally within an institution.
Yes.
There's going to be conflict. It's impossible to avoid, and actually, I think it's by design. Like, we learn personalism through having to manage conflict together, and so you can expect that too,
Right.
and try your best. Give each other the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so many valuable lessons today.
Yeah, and some of it's I'm not just I am a very wise person, but it's from Prabhupada because a lot of these things you hear them from some outside source and it kind of catch the way it's presented, especially like if it's from like a comedy or something. It's like it really hits you, but then when you really think about it, and then you can actually find that it's in Prabhupada's teachings in a different way, in a similar way, but just So Prabhupada talks about that, about don't think that ISKCON is going to be a utopia and that you're going to get along with everybody. He says we're giving Krishna consciousness to people from all different kind of backgrounds, and it's not that everyone's going to be, like the highest morality or whatever. I mean, this is Lord Chaitanya's movement. It's for everybody, so everybody means everybody. It's like
Right.
not everybody is necessarily your cup of tea.
Right.
And now this one, I'm not really sure whether it's really bona fide or not. But sometimes you almost have to. Sometimes for service, you almost have to have someone that you consider almost like a frenemy. I'm not exactly sure. It's a little borderline because the devotee is not supposed to see anyone as enemy. But sometimes, at least my experience, and that's probably my lack of Krishna consciousness, that there are some devotees that I have to work with sometimes, and I'm just like, okay. And sometimes we get along great, but other times it's like, so I don't know. I don't know if we'll have to hear from some of the wisdom of the sages or from somebody else about whether you can really have frenemies amongst devotees. I'm not really sure.
And you know what? It's so reasonable and to realize that people think of me that way. People
Yeah.
think of me as their frenemy.
Yeah.
That's just because I'm an imperfect person, and that's going to happen in my service relationships, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, one time there was a little conflict, and then the other party, I was complaining about something, and the other party said something like, "You people are never whatever," and I was like, "Okay," anyway, meaning just Anyway, I don't want to reveal any details because then I might get in trouble with some of my frenemies.
Okay, well, we don't want to do that
Let's
today.
just say that it's there's thorns on the path.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And we're all in this together.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate
I've got
this.
a question from the peanut gallery.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Manaram Prabhu is coming in.
Uh-oh. We probably went way over time.
Kesihanta Prabhu, you've been part of a men's group for as long as I can remember.
Oh, yeah, the men's group. I didn't even
What's
mention that.
What's the value of having a Sangha group of like-minded individuals to discuss stuff with?
Yeah, well, it's basically, especially it's good to have same gender friends because especially most of us who are married and have kids, and then we have our domestic things and we get together with other people, do things, but there's something about just having friends. It's like when you're growing up, you have friends and that you can share experiences with, and especially for men, they tend to be, they say, whoever they are, they don't open up as much and they hold things in. So like when the idea of the men's group, it's a safe place where you can say anything, and because there's rules, the 4 C's, which is confidentiality, the communication, commitment, and confrontation. Those are the 4 C's. So there's a place for that. And it's interesting over the years, like not everybody opens up in the group, but within the group, there's very strong friendships. I mean, there's a certain level of strong friendship among everyone in the group. But then there's certain connections between different people within the group that have become very, very good friends.
Yes.
And so sometimes even you don't feel like bringing out something to the group, but but then separately so it's just basically having a group of like it's in the Nectar of Instruction about revealing one's mind in confidence and hearing confidentially or whatever it is, that those 2 things. And that it's kind of like that, and it's about Krishna consciousness and our experience being devotees, but also just in all aspects of our life. Because we different people going through, like again, like it's not perfect. The whole thing about like in America, the divorce rate is this, but we're devotees. But well, we have about the same divorce rate, I think. So, like in my men's group, there's 11 people, and I think 3 or 4 have been married and never divorced. And out of the other 7, there's a couple that are divorced and single now. And everybody else is remarried for the 2nd or even 3rd time, and now they're, So, everyone's gone through these experiences, and now, of course, there's lots of members that are also grandparents, so they have that. I don't have kids, so I kind of sit on the side on that one, but I appreciate it from afar, but I don't get all goo-goo gaga like they do. But anyway, in our group is interesting because we have an 18-year age span, which is exactly, according to some people, the official baby boomer period. Being born in 1946 to 1964. We have someone that was born in 1946.
Wow.
We have someone who was born in 1964, and we have a whole bunch in between. So it's very interesting because it's like a whole generation that experienced different things. And we have Prabhupada disciples, and we have Prabhupada grand disciples, people that are retired, people that are working. So it's just a really it's a place where you can kind of like just check in with each other if you have problems. We're always there to help each other. We do service together. When our group was younger, we did a lot of fencing. Not fencing, but fencing for the cows.
Oh, I thought you meant fencing.
No, we do play water volleyball, which is
I've heard of these.
It gets pretty intense.
Yeah.
So we just the Blind Uncle Band,
the Blind Uncle Band.
Yeah, I try to block certain things out of my mind. I was
We
part
will
of the,
never block that out.
I was part of the Blind Uncle Band, and then I was from within trying to end the blind dismantle it because it just got. It was, anyway, but there's still.
You got some frenemies out of that one, I bet.
No, but there's no stopping Kalakanta. So with or without the band, he will never stop. No, I'm really appreciating the songbook, that he did on the Damodarastakams.
It's amazing.
Prayers. Anyway, so the Blind Uncle Band, doing service together. We've done lots of projects at the temple. We have a little money that we give dues, and so we've helped. Like we sponsor part of the feast for the Gainesville Rath Yatra. We've helped devotees in what needed money for things. And it's just a real, you get by with a little help from your friends. So, you got to have, that's part of Krishna consciousness, to have intimate friends. And, we get serious once in a while. Sometimes there's one devotee who we all know and love, Chadaratma. He's our very colorful member. And he likes to do these quizzes. From the books. Okay, so we're going to have a Chaitanya Charitamrita quiz, and he comes up with all these obscure things. So one time, everybody in collusion, we made a quiz that was
him.
That was like there was no way. And we all knew the answers, so that was fun.
And was he totally disturbed? Like, how does
no,
everyone
he
know
liked it. He Chadaratma loves attention. So he walks into, he'll come in and he'll set himself up for a joke or something, and he loves it.
Oh, it's so great.
We've also done some trips together. One of our members, Govinda Priya from Bolivia, is now the temple president in Miami, and we're trying to figure out a time when the whole group can go down like for a weekend and help them out with like a Sunday program or something. Yeah. We originally started the cart at the Gainesville Homecoming Parade. We built the original cart out of a hay wagon, and we did the whole. We were in charge of the whole thing, but then later we turned it over to the Rath Yatra crew, Dharmaraj and them. So yeah, we've done a lot of things. We've gone on some camping trips, whitewater rafting, going to the springs, Ichtuckney. For those of you who are in the Seinfeld world, we've been doing a Festivus celebration every winter now for the last 3 or 4 years. So we have a lot of fun. But it's just it runs the gamut of friendship, everything from serious things, people, deaths in the family, this, that, and the other, to having fun. And not only are we in that baby boom generation, also like I think 10 out of the 11 of us all have our birthdays from like the end of May to the beginning of July. It's very weird. So we have a big collective birthday party every year too. In the summer, and we have Festivus in the winter.
So nice. So get yourself a men's group or a ladies group.
Yeah, there's others. It started way back in '92 with this devotee Swayam Jatta, who unfortunately has passed away. He came from California, and it was like the men's movement was starting in the 90s, and he brought that here, and he started the men's groups and also ladies groups. And originally there was like 10 of each, and there's some that are still around.
Wow.
The group that I'm in started in 92. I think Kalakanta was in that original group, 92. I came in 93. Most of us have been in for 20 or 15 years. But there are some other, there was a couple other groups that are still around from that one, and also now the second generation. I know there's at least 1 or 2 in Alachua, and there's one in Gainesville.
Honoram Prabhu, do you have a men's group?
No, I'm not part of one.
Yeah,
I don't have one either.
This sounds like I should join one.
Yes, me too.
yeah, or start one.
Yes.
There's some simple rules. I mean, Swayam Jatta had the template, which we followed to a certain degree, but after a while, we kind of it was a little bit too serious for us. So the whole idea is that you do these different exercises and processes with trust building and get really deep down into your inner self that you wouldn't, tell any. So we've done a little of that, but, being men,
You develop your own mood too. I'm
our
sure
own mood, yeah.
Groups will develop their own moods,
and we've had people that after a while it wasn't for them, so they left. We've had I think for the past at least 10 years we have all the same people, but we've had other people that have come and gone. Some people have actually after they left the group, then they passed away. I'm not saying there was anything to that, but the people all the people that have stayed in the group are still alive.
Stick with it.
Some of the people that left the group are still alive, and some of the people that left the group are not. So you can draw your own conclusions. Correlation does not mean causation. All right.
Kesihanta Prabhu, thank you for your wonderful time and your association.
Well, thank you.
It's been wonderful talking
It
with
was
you today.
my experience at Krishna House also was very nice, especially in the beginning when you were there. When you were the what was your position?
Bhakti Academy Director.
Bhakti Academy Director. There's a lot of great energy. I mean, there still is, but there was a lot of great energy at that point. And when we did that yearbook, which was the first one, it was so much fun. And then we did the fundraiser, and it was just
fun.
And then, we didn't mention it, but we did rope you into some other videos that weren't exactly Krishna conscious.
Yeah, my Hollywood breaks.
Yeah, we were trying to make you into a star, but you decided that domestic life was something that you'd prefer to be a mother and a teacher, which is a wise choice. But we had some fun making some movies.
We sure did.
Yeah. All right. Well, it's been fun. Sorry we went over, but we really need to get Trivikram. I know Namamrita probably wants to do one just with Trivikram because Trivikram is also, Krishna South is also just a tiny slice of the pie.
Yes.
And I've
Namamrita
heard
will-
from Namamrita that he is a fanboy of 108.
100%.
So when I mentioned this morning to Namamrita, I said, "Hey, I'm actually we're doing the interview today," and he looked, and I said, "Oh, it's just me." He said, "Oh, okay, because Trivikram's mine."